Ever feel like when it comes to teamwork, it's like everyone's speaking a different language?
Totally.
We're doing a deep dive today into how emotional intelligence can completely change how your team operates.
Love it.
And we're drawing insights from PL14 Promote team performance through the application of emotional intelligence.
Sounds good.
This isn't just about being, like, nicer, right?
Right.
It's about really understanding the dynamics of your team.
Absolutely. And, we hear so much about technical skills, and they're important.
Right.
But that human element, the emotional intelligence, that's what can really make or break a team.
Totally. And our source mentions personality indicators, things like MBTI or DISC.
Yes.
For those who aren't familiar with those, could you give us a little rundown of what those are?
Sure. So these tools are really about getting a glimpse into people's preferences, right? So, for instance, you mentioned MBTI, the Myers-Briggs type indicator. That kind of categorizes people based on how they perceive the world, how they make decisions. Then you've got DISC, which is more about dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness.
Okay.
And it's less about putting people in boxes and more about understanding how those traits then play out in a team setting.
Got it. So how do we use this knowledge then to actually improve how a team functions?
Well, it goes back to the core of emotional intelligence. So empathy, self-awareness, social skills.
Yeah.
By recognizing that, for example, a team member who scores high on introversion on the MBTI might need a little bit more time to process information
That makes sense.
than somebody who's, super extroverted, right?
Right.
You, as a leader or even as a teammate, can adjust your communication style.
So it's about tailoring how you communicate based on someone's emotional needs, not just having a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. Because you might find that someone, for example, let's say they score really high on the conscientiousness scale in DISC.
Okay.
They might actually find constant reassurance or super detailed timelines
Interesting.
to be kind of demotivating, whereas someone who's really high on the influence scale might need that.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it could be the opposite of what you think. And our source material also talks about conflict resolution.
Of course.
Right.
Because conflict's going to happen.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
It's inevitable. But emotional intelligence can really be the key to navigating that conflict successfully. Let's say you've got two team members who are butting heads over the direction of a project, right?
Happens all the time.
All the time. Instead of just seeing the disagreement at face value, if we can understand the why behind their reactions.
The why.
That can be huge.
So can you give me an example of how that might play out in a real team setting?
Yeah. So imagine one person, they're really passionate about this bold, innovative approach to the project.
Okay.
Right? And the other is much more cautious. They want to be data-driven, take a slower approach.
Right.
If we understand that the first person, the one who's really gung-ho, maybe they're driven by a desire for recognition, and the other person might be really motivated by a need for security, that can totally change how we approach that conversation.
So it's not just about the conflict itself. It's understanding the deeper motivations of why they're reacting that way. And I think that's fascinating. If everyone had just a little bit of this understanding, how much smoother could things run?
I imagine.
This has been incredibly insightful. To kind of wrap things up here, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from this deep dive into emotional intelligence in teams?
I think if every team member, if they could just get a little bit of insight into their colleagues' emotional needs, their communication styles, imagine the impact that would have. Creating an environment where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued for who they are.
Such a good point. Well, that's it for this deep dive. Don't miss our next episode for more fascinating insights.